Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Pitch Talk.
We are fans of football dropping vlogs, blogs, videos and podcasts on the beautiful game.
Check out our videos on YouTube and Instagram's IGTV,
including special feature segments, vlogs such as
5 Minutes with the G,
the Straight Shootin View,
Coaching with JBK,
audio on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts,
Podomatic, Spotify,
Mixcloud
and other podcast platforms.
Join the Pitch Talk revolution on Twitter, Instagram,
Facebook
and our official website www.pitch-talk.com.
The pitch is where we eat,
the pitch is where we sleep,
and the pitch is where we talk.
I can see you now. I can see you now and then. I can see you now.
Welcome to
the Straight Shootin View.
What is up? My name is Straight Shootin LJA and welcome to another episode of the Straight Shootin View. Now, this is going to be a bit different to usual episodes of the Straight Shootin View because I'm actually going to have a guest, and that guest will be none other than Coach JBK himself. So we're going to be talking about Watford and their recent situation, getting rid of Claudio Ranieri after just under 4 months in charge. So yeah, we are going to delve into that in this episode of the Straight Shootin View. Hey, what is up, people? Welcome to the Straight Shootin View. And you know what? Yeah, Watford. The situation at Watford to me is just an absolute circus. It really is. It really is a circus. I mean, sacking Claudio Ranieri after less than 4 months in charge. And this dude was basically heralded as almost a saviour. And it is one of them where it's like 14 games. How is a manager supposed to, or a coach, head coach, however you want to phrase it, how is anybody coming into a club in any capacity supposed to get any sort of traction or implement any sort of, whether it be playing style, whether it be club ethos? How are you supposed to do that in 14 games? I mean, Frank de Boer was bad when, Palace let him have a whole summer of spending and then sacked him after 4 games. But Watford now, I mean, this is legitimately a joke. I mean, I can understand, Watford being in the bottom 3, but they're a yo-yo club like West Brom anyway. So, I mean, it's just hilarious. And the Watford board, there's one funny quote actually. The board feels that with nearly half the Premier League campaign remaining, a change in the head coach position will give a new appointment sufficient time to work with a talented squad to achieve the immediate goal of retaining Premier League status. It's like you're talking out both sides of your neck. It's like half the Premier League campaign left. A change in the head coach position will give a new appointment sufficient time to work with a talented squad. Well, like, you'd already brought Ranieri in. Like, they'd already brought him in after a few games of the season. Of the season. So it's like, what are you doing? I don't know what Watford are playing at. Seriously, this is just hilarious to me. I mean, you look at, he was given a 2-year contract. And it's like, the first game was against Liverpool, and okay, cool. That was always going to be difficult. We smacked him up. But, I mean, him being, like, Ranieri being the 15th manager since the Pozzo family took over in 2012. That's 15 in 10 years. 16 now, because who's his replacement? They've somehow coaxed Roy Hodgson out of retirement. And it's like, Watford are one of them clubs, similar in a way to Everton, and similar in a way to what I've said about Tottenham, Man United, especially Man United. A club going the short-term route to try and get long-term success. Watford now, it's one of them ones where it's like, they may not have the delusions of grandeur that a club like Everton does, but they're still going the same short-termist route in terms of management, and they're literally throwing good money off the bat. Because you look at how You look at how Watford have spent. You look at how Everton have spent 50 million on Gylfi Sigurdsson. Richarlison, still overpriced, and ironically from Watford. And it's one of them where it's like, what was it? Kike Sanchez Flores, I think, took over Watford twice. It's like, dude, you fired him once, then you bring him back, and it's like, dude, you think it's going to be different now that you've brought? It's like, it's stupid. It's like, do the same thing twice, expect a different outcome. It's like, that's the definition of insanity. And like, for me, there's so much silliness with this. And bringing in Roy Hodgson, the dude's like 70. So one of them ones, like, let him enjoy his retirement. I don't know how they coaxed him out, but it's one of them where it's like, well, he's kind of there just to steady the ship. But Roy Hodgson, all right, he did it very well at Crystal Palace. He steadied that ship and got them flying right again. Same thing at Fulham. At Liverpool, not so great. But our club was a shambles at that point when we brought him in, and it just wasn't a good fit. But I said, Roy Hodgson is a manager who's going to steady the ship potentially at Watford, but can he keep him up? That's the thing. Like Viagra, can Roy Hodgson keep it up? So it's one of them where it's like there's no guarantee of that. And these changes, it's Watford's third manager this season. That's how absurd it is. Their third manager this season. And it's like, dude, what are you playing at? Like, you need stability. And you're not going to get stability when you're constantly trying to build on shifting sands. You're trying to build on constantly shifting sands, so there's no stability there. And if there's no stability, guess what? You're going to get relegated, you're going to come back, you're going to get relegated, come back. And it's like, you're not going to achieve the long-term goal of getting into Europe. Because everybody else in those European positions, mate, you're going to be punching above your weight. And then once you get into Europe, whether it be the Europa Conference League, Europa League proper, Champions League, whatever the case, you're going to be up against sides who have more stability. And if they don't have more stability, they'll blow you out of the water with budget. So it's like, oh, God. I mean, Watford to me are one of them ones where, once again, I said, another side screaming out for a long-term plan. And like, I mean, I've said before, it's just one of them ones where you look at FSG, for instance, or even Man City with the Sheikhs. I mean, Man City Sheikhs have deployed shortcuts in some areas, but they've gone long-term in others. Like the money that they're ploughing into Carrington and youth development and that kind of thing. It's like, cool. That's long. That's you may not have a long-term vision, but at least they've got a long-term plan. And I think City have both. With us, Liverpool, we have both, fortunately, because FSG have been with us just over a decade. Yeah, that Super League thing was a debacle. Not denying that. They've made mistakes. The Suarez thing, yes, they've made mistakes, but in the words of Hulk Hogan from WWE Confidential about the demise, rise and fall of WCW, you can make... It's one of them ones when you're flying a plane, you can make a few little mistakes, but very few big ones before the nose of the plane starts going down. And it's one of them where it's like FSG, yeah, they made a few relatively big mistakes, but at the same time, you look at what they've generally done, it's like, okay, cool. They brought the success back. They got us back to the summit of English football and winning a Premier League title. So their long-term plan, and it took what, 10 years, but they did it because they came in with a long-term vision and a long-term plan to execute said long-term vision. They came in saying, we're not going to be like throwing money around like certain billionaire owners. You know who they were aiming at with that. It's like, we're going to make this club stable again, and we're going to get them back to the top of English football where they belong. That is Liverpool, where we belong. But we're not going to take shortcuts to do it. We're not going to basically leverage the future of the club for a good season or two. It's like, no. So it's one of them where it's like I said, like looking at the Watford thing. To me, the Pozzos don't have a clue. They've got a long-term vision, but they have no idea. They have no long-term plan, and you can't have one without the other. You really can't. You can shortcut some things for a certain amount of time, but overall, you just can't do it. And some people have said that Watford's long-term version is to get into Europe, and it's one of them ones where it's like they've invested heavily in their like business model and upgraded the ground and train areas and all that. But that format of buying gems cheap and selling for bigger money and have a coach to coach, it's one of them where it's like, I don't agree with that as a method. Because, again, like with the Everton comparison, you're taking quote-unquote gems, a.k.a. rejects from other clubs, Tom Cleverley, among others. It's one of them ones where it's like, it doesn't really work. Like, you look at Everton, Theo Walcott, Alex Iwobi, what have they done? It's like rejects from other clubs, and they ain't done anything. So, I mean, it's just one of them where I said you have to have owners who are willing to commit to a long-term plan and not deviate from it. Because at the end of the day, it's one of them ones. I mean, what I said, Watford seem to be throwing good money off the bat, which is just not smart. And you know what? I mean, even stuff like just managers, where it's like, Sanchez Flores, bringing him in twice. It's like, dude, what? He didn't mess up enough the first time. It looked as absurd as Mourinho going to Chelsea twice. It's like, what? So nice, you want to get fired twice because you know what's going to happen if a couple of results go bad. And it's one of them where it's like, I just look at it as, like, remember, cast your mind back to July of 2017. We got a Pit Talk rant of the week about it from July 17 about Klopp's 6-year Liverpool contract extension. Lunacy or long-term planning. And people thought at the time, people were laughing at the time, you give him a 6-year contract, It's like, dude, this ain't Newcastle with Alan Pardew getting an 8-year contract. No. This manager is like, Klopp's in a different league. And he's shown it. Champions League, Premier League winner. It's like, you can't argue with that success. So it's one of them, and both of them, in his first 4 or 5 years at the club. So, yeah, you can't argue with that level of success. But it's one of them where it's like, I said, like, everybody thought that FSG were crazy to give Klopp a 6-year extension, a year or two into his contract. But they saw the club progressing. They saw how good Klopp was. They saw, the Europa League final in his first season with basically Brendan Rodgers' squad. And then it's like, no, you know what? We've got the right man in charge. And now it's time to put our money where our mouth is in FSG and be like, you know what? We're going to send the signal out to everyone. We believe in this man. This is the man to take us forward. And Watford don't do that with their managers, clearly. Because the way they're playing musical chairs with them, they clearly don't believe in it. It's either they're not believing in the people they're hiring, or they've got a plan and they don't even believe in that. So it's on them where it's like, it doesn't really make any sense. And I mean, to me, if the top is rotten, it is only a matter of time before it filters down and ruins everything else. So it's one of them where, I mean, Watford's, I said, circus. It legitimately is an absolute circus. And Hodgson, I don't think is going to be able to change that because there has to be a culture shift. The Pozzos have to be willing to potentially relinquish some control. Whereby, you know what, give a manager some autonomy and give a manager some proper time before you get rid. Otherwise, again, you're throwing good money off the bat. You're just wasting your money and your business model. It's a badly run business. As I've always said about football clubs are businesses, extremely badly run businesses in most cases, but businesses nonetheless. And it seems like Watford are following that. It's like, yeah, you want to go boing, 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 boing. Well, long term, it's not sustainable. It really isn't. So It is what it is. But you know what, I've had enough of my say on it. I'd like to know your say as listeners, as ardent listeners of the Pitch Talk Revolution. I'd like to know your views as well. But you know what? I'm going to hand over. Jamie, what do you think about all of this? What do you think, Jay?
So yeah, my take on all of this is exactly what you said about short-term thinking, and it's evident in terms of how many coaches or managers have come through the turnstiles and then left. So they've only been around for at least enough time just to have like 4 or 5 serious games, and then the rest was kind of like, well, you're not really doing too much with this. My only thing about the coach that they had beforehand was he was playing a certain style that the fans weren't happy with, but he did get the results at the start. Now, it does stand to reason that you can have a style, but you may not have the players. That's always going to be the case. You may want to play free-flowing attacking football, but if you haven't got the quality in your side, you're better off just sitting back and hoping for the best. And that's a lot of things that that I would say the chairman probably miss out on, is that they want to see the free flowing football, but they don't necessarily understand what it takes to actually get there. They're just expecting that, you know what, we're in the Premier League, we're going to stay here, we're going to do what we can do, blah blah blah, and that would be it. Then you bring in Claudio Ranieri, who had a successful season, essentially one season out of the many that he's had with Chelsea, Leicester, now Watford. He's had so many seasons that he's only had one successful season. So he's experienced, but he's not necessarily experienced in flourishing with a club that naturally will always play on the front foot in the Premier League. When you look at the Watford season that they had in, I think it was 2017, 2018, or no, it might have been 2018, 2019, they made it to the FA Cup final. And that was on the back of Chelsea going out quite early. That was on the back of Liverpool not having a decent run in the cup. And they played a Man City side who essentially went and won that trophy along with the league title, along with the League Cup as well. So, and then in that same season, I think Liverpool went and won the Champions League. So, my thing with this was they didn't necessarily have they hit their dizzying heights. And you see it with teams like Burnley. You see it with teams like Newcastle. They will hit the group of players that they have. They will hit their dizzying heights with that coach. The coach gets them to that level, and then that is it. There's nothing else that he can do with that team. Why? Because it's just the English way of doing things. You get to a certain point, and then you stagnate. So look at what happened with Guardiola. Guardiola could have had at least a 10-year stretch with Barcelona, hands down. But he knew that at some point he's going to get tired. It's going to stagnate. He's not going to be able to give as much as he can. And then he took a year out at Bayern Munich. Decided to leave Bayern Munich. He could have had another, again, 5-10 year stretch. Decided to leave Bayern Munich, and then came to Man City, where he stayed probably the longest he stayed at a club. And stands to reason, he's got what he needs at the club now, which they're happy to give him what they need. But that's my issue. My issue is not that. My issue with the Pozzo family and just things inside of Watford is I don't necessarily know how things are at Watford now or were. And the thing with Watford, given the fact that they've now brought in the women's sides, so now they're in the Championship. They brought in resources to make sure that things are going in the right direction, that they are essentially, how do I put it? They're essentially modernizing the club, even though it's a family friend. It's meant to be a family club, just like West Brom, just like all of these clubs that they keep yo-yoing up and down. It's meant to be a family friendly club. The problem with the Pozzo family and is they've got this idea of they want to get into Europe, but they're going to do it their way, with managers coming in just to make sure that they can hit 7th place. Because Watford got to the final, they've been searching for that answer ever since, and that was 3 years ago now. So now that they've gone down and come back up, means that they're still searching for that answer of getting into Europe. So that's the reality. It's not that they want to stay in the Premier League. It's they now want to get into Europe because they know what it takes to get into Europe, stay in the Premier League. They've seen it over the years of going down, coming back up, going down, coming back up. They know exactly what it takes. So it's not really an issue. Now they want to get into Europe. It's a case of who are we going to find, and they don't want to find somebody who's going to be a rookie that doesn't understand what it takes to be in the Premier League. They don't want to be bringing in somebody who doesn't necessarily think they're going to stay long enough just to be in the Premier League. They're just kind of looking at it from, let's get into Europe. That's where the money is. We've now got a name for Watford. My only issue with this is Watford aren't that type of club. In every league and across the world, there's always going to be 3 or 4 clubs that are always going to be mid-table to the bottom end. Yes, they might have a few standardized seasons, but then you've got to change your business model, like Liverpool did. The only difference with Liverpool is that they had the name, but you've got to be a bit more of a. You've got to have something about you to within your business model to make it to Europe. Southampton almost made it, but they didn't. Oh no, they did. No, they did. They had one or two seasons, not too long ago. But then they started selling off their players, and they haven't been able to replicate that. They've had. Who else have we had in Europe? Who else has the Premier League had in Europe? Everton, Burnley. They were in the qualifying stages, so technically they were still in Europe. But then look at where it takes them. They're nowhere near where they should be. And that's the issue. Because they get to Europe, they don't know what it takes. And then when they try to get back there, there's no sort of direction, not just on the pitch, but also off of it. So my issue isn't just the Pozzo family. It's how are you going to get the best out of the business model that the Pozzo family get, but also how are you going to get the best out of a team that's basically saying that they should be in Europe when they haven't got the players to play that style just to get them to Europe in the first place. That's the issue. I don't know. I could go on for quite some time. Pozzo family with their business model. Not because it's trying to sell. I think they're just kind of looking at Europe as the main goal, because they've been under their tutelage. They've been Watford have been in the Premier League, so they know what it takes to be in Europe, be in the Premier League, hands down. The style on the pitch probably doesn't replicate where they want to be, which means that they're not really looking for the right kind of coach that plays the right type of style. Then they've gone from that to, we talk about the players. Are the players able to play that type of style of football? Possibly not. It will show, because you get teams who come from maybe two. If you look back at teams like Stevenage, they had, I think, back-to-back promotions from the National League up to League One, and then they struggled. They struggled in League One, and then I think they just about held their own in League One, but they were looking at possibly getting a third promotion. Not only did they not have the resources, but they just weren't there as a team. And then they've kind of gone backwards a little bit, but managed to hold their own in League Two. Having Roy Hodgson coming in, somebody who retired to come back, is the same thing as Claudio Ranieri taking over. You're not actually moving the needle. You're just basically making sure that you can stay in the Premier League, just so that you can make a decision in the next 10 weeks as to what you want to do going forward. And when I say 10 weeks, it's just before the end of I think it's just before the end of the season, which means that wherever they are and hope that they secure a spot, then they can make a decision on whether they keep Roy Hodgson or they go, you know what, we need to look for somebody a bit more new and fresh with ideas, who's going to play a style of football that suits not only the first team, but also the rest of the club. Now, the reason why most people will say that that's the way that it needs to be, and I genuinely agree. But the issue is that you've now got to build those players long enough to say, you know what, let's get the success where we need it in the Premier League, where we need those type of players coming through the door. Look at Brighton; it's well run, and it's got a manager who's forward thinking. So the question will be, if Brighton so happen to change that model, why? Why are they doing it? They brought in the current FA technical director, Dan Ashworth, in. No, sorry, the other way around. So he was the technical director of at the FA. He was the one that successfully built West Bromwich Albion, and obviously once he left, you could see the decline of West Bromwich Albion. Then you bring in he was one of the guys who brought up basically how England play at the moment, or how coaches perceive England to play, and blah blah blah. So we're talking about playing out from the back, what we do with the ball in midfield, how we kind of move the ball, how we kind of be creative in the final third. He was instrumental in that, in terms of the technical direction that most clubs should adopt. Now you look at it, what he's basically doing at a club like Brighton. Imagine what he could do for a club like Arsenal, Manchester United, maybe, quite maybe, even Liverpool. I mean, Manchester City don't need him, not without a shadow of a doubt, because they've already got a technical director in, well, essentially, Guardiola. He's the figurehead of how Man City will play, and how the rest of the teams are built to suit that style. So that's the question that you've got to look at as well. Are they recruiting the people that can help the manager play the style that they want to play, or are they just bringing in people just so that they can fill the quota? And that's what I think it is. Dan Ashworth is now at Brighton. You can see the type of style that they're playing when it comes to football. Yes, it hasn't been successful this season, but you saw what they were trying to do with Graham Potter last year. They switched it just simply because when you looked at Houghton, his way of playing, Chris Houghton's way of playing, was get the result towards a certain period of time. It was more just hit and hope, and then sit back a little bit more. Whereas they're now saying, well, why do we have to sit back? We could easily press. We just need to be smart in where we press. If you look at when Chris Houghton started his time with Newcastle, that's how we got his win against Arsenal. Arsenal basically had really lost to Newcastle in a long time, or even lost at the Emirates in a long time. He was the first one to really get the result against Arsenal. I think it was a 1-0 win with Andy Carroll scoring, I believe. But yeah, taking it back to where it was, I think that's the issue. I think Roy Hodgson is a short-termist managerial appointment, and it'll be interesting if he can keep the club up, and then the direction that they go after that. At the moment, the business model of Watford is not working. That's what it is.
And that has been another episode of the Straight Shootin View. The first half was me, the second half was JBK, my pitch talk co-host, one of them. So it's one of them was, what did you think? What did you think? Did you agree with myself? Did you agree with Jamie? Did you agree with both of us in regards to our thoughts on Watford and their seeming lack of a long-term plan, even though they have a long-term vision? Two ain't quite marrying up. Do you think that Watford need to come up with a long-term plan to achieve that long-term vision of potentially getting into Europe that the Pozzo family have? Do they need to be a lot more stable with their management? It's one of them ones, man. What is the issue at Watford? There's a lot of them, aren't there? They're going through managers like some of us go through hot dinners. But you know what? Want to know your views? www.pitch-talk.com is the official website. Check out vlogs, podcasts such as the Straight Shootin View, Coaching with JBK, 5 Minutes with the G, and much, much more there on our official website. You can also listen to our podcast on the website. You can catch our YouTube material on youtube.com/pitch talk. You can catch special feature segments there as well. You can also catch Pitch Talk at the SAL Senior Challenge Cup Final 2021. That was a lot of fun last year. And also JBK at the Vitality Women's FA Cup Final 2021 as well. His video diary. Also, you can catch a lot more of our older legacy footage there as well. Remember, you can catch our podcast via our website. You can grab that RSS feed. You can also grab it on Verbal, VURBL.com. We are Verbal ambassadors and proud of it. You can catch us on Podomatic, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, so many places. Wherever you pick up your podcast, you can catch us there as well. At Pitch Talk on Instagram, check out vlog previews and much, much more up there. Also, we're on Reddit at Pitch Talk on Reddit as well. Connect with us there. Facebook.com/Pitch Talk. Become a fan, become a friend, become a member of the group. Join the footballing revolution. We are working so hard to create. At Pitch Talk on Twitter. Tweet with us, follow us, see what we are up to. Yeah, man. Wherever you're at, we are too. I have been Straight Shootin LJA, and on behalf of myself and my special guest for this episode, Coach JBK, we will see you next time on the Straight Shootin View. Thank you for your time, people.
Join the Pitch Talk revolution.
Check out the official Pitch Talk website.
www.pitch-talk.com